Sign up for our monthly giveaway. Every month, we give away exclusive Cigars and Sea Stories gear, as well as items for our guests and sponsors. Those are gadgets, gizmos, all sorts of different stuff. When you subscribe to our newsletter by going to cigarsandseastories.com and clicking subscribe, you automatically enter into our monthly giveaway. How you earn points for those giveaway is by sharing the referral link with your network. Every time you share, you earn a point. Every time one of your friends subscribes, you earn an additional 5 points. So go to cigarsandseastories.com right now and subscribe.
From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli, we fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom.
Hello, folks, and welcome to another episode of Cigars and Sea Stories. I'm your host, Bennett Tanton, and today we sit down with August Ewell, who is the founder and I guess you would call him the managing editor at Full Magazine Publishing. And they've created a graphic novel called Full Mag, where they interview military veterans and obtain their first-person stories, and then they basically turn it into a graphic novel. So Volume 1 is out. It's got stories from all generations of veterans. No further ado, August Ewell. August Ewell, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Bennett. This is exciting to have the opportunity to talk to you and your listeners.
So talk to me about, we're going to go right into it real fast. Talk to me about Full Magazine Publishing.
So Full Magazine Publishing, we are the publishers of Full Mag, Veteran Stories Illustrated, or just Full Mag for short. And it's basically a unique veteran history project. So we interview veterans and we're presenting their stories in a graphic novel and military magazine format. So the stories are in the veterans' own words and they're illustrated with art from talent within the comic book industry. And then we also have traditional written articles by veteran authors and military historians that accompany those first-person accounts. And so we have the first-person account with art from the comic book industry, and then we have articles that tend to be more of a strategic or military history perspective of those exact same events or missions. So it's a graphic novel military history magazine.
And how long has it been around?
Well, we just published our very first premier volume was printed in the USA, of course, in November. So just several months, and from the first veteran we interviewed, that was about a year and a half in the making, because it's a 56-page graphic novel.
It's pretty serious.
It's pretty big.
It's not just like a regular comic book.
No, not at all. So we intentionally wanted to avoid the feel and the title of comic book. So it's magazine size. So it's full mag, and it's magazine size, not comic book size. And it also the cover art is hand painted artwork, not comic art, and its paperweight is much heavier quality. It's not pulp. It's 80-pound page weight. So it's, when you feel it in your hand, it has a heft to it.
And how many artists do it all?
We had probably about 8 artists on volume 1. And that includes folks across the spectrum, some really famous artists, 2 artists on the cover art, various inkers and colorists, and some of the names are pretty famous. Mike DiCarlo is pretty well known, Ron Wagner, and then Russ Heath is probably our most famous artist. He's 91 years old, and he himself happens to be a veteran of the Army Air Corps, so his service actually predates the existence of the United States Air Force.
Wow. Crazy. So your volume 1 is out. And that was done in November, right?
That's
so
correct.
When is volume slated to come out?
Well, we think that this is something that we can produce about one of per year. one, we want to give, especially after Volume 1, we do want to give a chance to get input back from the readers, the reader community, and the veteran community, and to get, potentially even stories from readers. So we want to have a time to sort of be out there, and then plus just the production time of the stories. I mean, we got some great. Volume 1 had stories from World War II, Viet Nam, Afghanistan just 5 years ago, and we've got even more stories from World War II, from Operation Market Garden, first person, more Vietnam stories. We would love to get a Korea story or just anything that we think has a place in this. If we don't go out and get these stories, they can be lost forever, and that's how we see it. So we feel a sense of urgency to capture these stories.
So I like that. So you were saying that it actually, because I haven't read it yet, and I really want to bad. I'm just being full disclosure. But I like the fact that it's different. It's not all just about like Vietnam, or it's not all just about World War II. You know what I mean? So I think that's pretty awesome. That it kind of jumps all over the place.
It does, and we also are not committed, I guess you could say, to just giving stories about conflicts. I mean, there's many stories out there that can be short little vignettes of just anything. We don't want it to be portrayed as something that glorifies war or just focuses on conflict. But when the very first veteran we interviewed was one of the last two Doolittle Raiders, David Thatcher. And interviewed him last year, and sadly he passed away about a month after our interview. But we actually decided, because the Doolittle Raid has been pretty seriously covered in the historic record,
right? But
we knew that he had, so we knew he had flown like 26 more missions out of North Africa. So we decided to focus on that. And when he started talking, I stopped talking and started listening.
Yeah, right.
It's great.
That's some serious stuff right there.
Yeah.
So give us some of your background and how you're a veteran yourself, but give us the background of you.
Yeah. So I guess I've always had an interest in military history. My father was in the Air Force. He made a career out of it, and he was an aviator. I enlisted and worked on the flight line in the Air Force, maintaining F-16s just for 4 years. And then after that, I got my degree in history. So it's kind of a convergence of things that I personally have an interest in. And I do feel that some of these stories are something that if they were just in print, it'd be a great read. But by forcing the reader almost to slowly go through it and digest and appreciate the art as the story slowly unfolds, it's, in my opinion, a much different experience, and it's more likely to hopefully appeal to a broader spectrum because there's the artistic aspect as well as the great stories.
So, where were you stationed in the Air Force?
I was served at the 22nd Fighter Squadron in Spangdahlem Air Base in Germany. So we would deploy from there to other locations, in the Middle East and the surrounding areas in Europe. And so, that was this was in the early 90s. So a lot of what we were doing was some of these, I guess, between the Iraqi conflicts, some of the no-fly zone enforcement and those types of things. Yeah, and so you're just flying sorties up, patrolling these areas. I mean, and then we were I was on the maintenance crew. So I went to about 5 or 6 months of tech school to learn my trade. And then when I got assigned to Spangdahlem, we got brand new F-16s literally right off of the factory line. So the troubleshooting that I had learned was pretty minimally applied in the real world because these things were brand new and you just swap out boxes and ops check it and like, oh, okay. And you're not right. Doing in-depth electrical troubleshooting, but it was a great experience for me as a young person.
So probably, all right. So you're in Germany. So how much of Europe did you go see?
Well, I took advantage. So Spangdahlem is very close to Luxembourg and France and Belgium and the Netherlands. It's a pretty rural area, but I did have an automobile, and so got all over, just in my off time around Western Europe, and then also had some opportunities to deploy to some locations in like Romania and England as part of the job. So I had, to be honest, before I joined the military, I hadn't really traveled outside of the U.S. and never really had any appreciation for foreign languages or cultures. So it was a great experience for me, and got to see a lot of the world.
So give us a story. Come on. I know you got one. You
well,
gotta
I have,
probably have a ton.
So
tell me you're not going to get in trouble for. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I can think of one, and you have to keep in mind when you work on F-16s, you obviously, if you quote deploy, it might be a different experience than say a Marine might be.
Right.
We're in air-conditioned tents.
We're good, man.
Literally.
Get it? We all know it. We know the chair force and what it's all about, and we love your chow halls and all that fun stuff. So there.
I to be honest, I never ate so well, and I'm a pretty thin person, but I put on about 20 pounds in basic training, and I never ate so. Really and most people probably lose weight, but we had deployed to this actually was a location in the Middle East, and we were scheduled to leave via C5, and so one of our crew chiefs was a no-show for our flight out. Which this was going to be a pretty big deal, but as I guess you could say was typical, the C5 didn't start. It had issues, so we were actually troubleshooting it, even though that's not really our aircraft that we're specialists in, and so lo and behold, our friend had a pretty hard night of drinking and had passed out in an alley, and we had no passports because we were there on orders. So he got into a cab and was trying to pay the guy in Deutschmarks and et cetera. And so had it not been for the broken down C5, I don't know what a missing movement is involved with in a foreign country, but I don't know how he would have guessed walked to the embassy or something, but yeah.
No passport.
Yeah, no money, no passport, no explanation of how you're there. So that's about the extent of excitement of a F-16 maintainer story.
Oh man. So history degree, right? So what all right, so obviously you don't just go get a history degree, like you have a interest in history. Obviously, so what was that like being stationed in Europe and being able to go see and just being, it's if people that haven't been there don't get it. That's some of that stuff is, 1,500 years old, whereas in 1,200 years old, but like, America, everything's 200 and change, that's it. What I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. That's a great question, because to be honest, that it was actually a huge influence on my choice to. So I had actually been in college and I dropped out to join the Air Force because I really had no direction, and I was actually pretty immature at that age, and I'd always wanted to go into the Air Force, so I did it. And when I got stationed in at Spangdahlem, they actually had the University of Maryland offered classes there, and I had a pretty reasonable schedule when I was home that I could plan around. So I took a Western civilization night course there, and what we did for one class is we just drove down. So Trier is was one of the four capitals of the Roman Empire. It's about an hour from Spangdahlem. So we went there as a class and looked at all the stuff that we were just learning about, and I thought to myself, if I ever go back and get my degree, it's going to be in history.
Wow.
And that's what I ended up doing. Like you said, it is a different experience. It's just there's things that I really enjoy about having lived over there for about maybe 3 or 4 years total in my life. It's there's things you definitely appreciate when you get back to America, but there's things that you enjoy, and it's a totally different experience, like you said. So it did alter the course, I guess, of my career.
Right. So what's the most amazing historical, like, landmark type thing that you've encountered in your travels? Doesn't have to be Europe. It could be wherever, you know what I mean?
Wow. Yeah. That's a great question because, I think, I live in Montana, so that, we have natural beauty, which is amazing. But really, I think I like some of the aspects of some of the large cities in almost any city in Europe, the totality of the ease at which it is to get around. Like if you go to a city like Berlin or Paris, you don't want or need a car. And it's just a great experience to be able to get around on foot and not worry about getting run over, as a pedestrian. So not so much a landmark, but just that there's very few large cities personally in the U.S. that I would want to live in, but there's probably 100 of them because the total experience is different. So I don't know that I answered your question directly, but
no,
it's more,
like for me, one of the coolest things I ever did was I climbed, and this is, debated by history, of course, is I climbed Mount Sinai, which is, in the Sinai Peninsula there in Egypt, which at that time, it was Egypt. It had been contested for, it's been contested for centuries, but either way, Egypt's got it now. So climbing up that mountain and then standing on the top of it and seeing around, it's just kind of one of those awe-inspiring, you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So not like saying, because I saw the pyramids the same trip, and it was just, it really, I'm not even kidding. That's how I felt. I was like, what's all the fuss about? It sounds so sad and so bad that I say that, but like you really have, you really build it up in your mind so much more when you're going to see the pyramids, right? But I mean, it's cool. Don't get me wrong. Don't everyone get all mad at me, but it's cool. But it's kind of like you walk up and you go, meh, because it's just big ass freaking brown shit in the desert. Just big ass triangles, Of course, I know I'm a history buff myself, so I know everything about it. But to actually be there and see it, you're just kind of like, okay, I could keep watching this on television. I'm good.
Yeah, well, they are marvels of advanced manufacturing and math, I guess, and mysteries that we will never know the answers to.
Right, for sure. And what did they say lately? I think it was just like 2 weeks ago or maybe a month ago. They had said they found another chamber, they think. So I read that as well. It's very tantalizing to hear about this. Thanks. It's their special way of scanning the pyramid brought up, that there's another void. So it's like, okay, well, let's get in there,
That's right.
But sure. Shit. Yeah, I love history too, man. And it's one of those things like in another life, I would have been like a high school history teacher. You know what I mean? And drove all my freaking students crazy. But
well, my high school history teacher, who everyone loved, but this was in Florida, he kept the AC cranked in his classroom so you couldn't fall asleep.
That's awesome. Mine was a Navy. He was a Navy vet. I remember him. He was such an asshole. As I look back now and I saw like, dude, you're such an asshole. But I also understand kind of where he was coming from now that I'm on the other side and a veteran and the whole thing. I kind of understand his whole thing. He was a product of another time for sure.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah. So, all right. So F-16s, why F-16s? Did you get a choice or?
Well, yeah, actually, it was, as I mentioned, I actually happened to be in college when I enlisted. So I had really, I took the ASVAB, and I actually did pretty well in the electrical, whatever they call aptitude area. So when I enlisted, it was actually a time when, or I don't know, maybe it's always like this, but I had to wait like 6 months to get in, or, to go in. And all I knew that I was going to be in what they call the mechanical area. So I had no idea other than that it would be somehow in what they consider the world of mechanics, I guess. And then in basic training, they hand you a bunch of job descriptions. And so, these are like 3 or 4 sentence descriptions. So I just picked all, and they put them in descending order of what you want, 1 to 8 or whatever. And I just put all kinds of stuff on the flight line, crew chief, weapons, electronics, aviation, or rather avionics. The only one I didn't put was the fuel maintainers, because it said you have to crawl inside of fuel tanks, and I thought that didn't sound very appealing.
Nasty.
Yeah. So, and then lo and behold, when it came round, you get it towards the end of basic training, they tell you what, for the people that are in that situation that didn't have a guaranteed job of some kind, like, oh, you're going to be, they called it Air Force, or Air Force electro-environmental systems specialist. So on the F-16 or any jet aircraft, they actually, all of the bleed air systems that pull air off the engines to operate servos and to run cold air into the cockpit and cool the avionics, that was all our responsibility, as well as the electrical system. And, they, over the years, they divide and recollect these specialties. So at that point in time, it was 2 specialties combined together. I don't know if that's still the case, but that's how I ended up. I could have been in the motor pool. I could have been, a telephone guy, I guess. It just was I feel good that they respected, at least from the universe of my choices, I got one of it. It wasn't something that was just way out there,
Right, for sure. So how badass is the F-16 as an aircraft?
Well, I personally think this is just my opinion from the physical beauty of the aircraft. I really like it. I mean, I think there's people that think having just one engine is a bit of a negative. And I forget one of the pilots I met.
Powerful engine.
Yeah, and its fuel kit, it has. I think they said, what do you call a F-16 at EOR, and it's called bingo. So I don't know. It's like, I guess compared to the F-15, their range is minimal. I'm not qualified really as a maintainer to talk about its capabilities, other than a lot of these aircraft that they keep saying are obsolete or whatever, and we're still flying thousands of them, and we're still maintaining the same aging aircraft in the Air Force, and right. So it's a testament to the badassness of a lot of these aircraft.
I mean, technically the F-16, I mean, it's still, I mean, we technically though, do we fly it frontline units anymore? Or I think they decommissioned it now. I mean, not decommissioned it, but you know what I mean?
Well, I'm sure a lot of them, and they tend to give the Guard and Reserve the,
exactly.
The late models, or whatever the non-new ones are, the early Block 20s and 30s. So they, they're probably transitioned to that, but I'm almost positive that there's certainly still active fighter wings that have
right.
squadrons of F-16s for sure.
Yeah, because we used to have one here in Syracuse. It's the 174th Fighter Wing, which now is a Predator drone unit, and they still call it a fighter wing. So, okay, if you must, I guess, but not exactly. So we used to see them flying around here all the time, and then now the baddest Air Force aircraft that I ever got to be accustomed to and I didn't get to mess around with it, but I got to be part of. I was an Air Force civilian, and I worked for security forces as a security specialist down in Tyndall Air Force Base down in Panama City, Florida.
Sure.
And they have an F-22 squadron there. So the Raptor, oh my God, it's loud as shit, first off. I mean, I thought the F-16 was loud. the F-22 is really fucking loud. And
wow. Yeah,
it's just ridiculous. Like like there was an air show. I mean, and I've seen F-16s and stuff in an air show. It was really cool. It was awesome. And you watch them go vertical and they just like climb because of that single, I mean, it's a single engine, but it's powerful, right?
right.
This F-22 though, I shit you not, it's like doing shit UFOs do. Like it was crazy. It's really crazy what some of these guys are able to do with it. So pretty amazing aircraft. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but it's
I have only in the same place. I actually have vacationed down there in Navarre, which is in the same area there at Panhandle, and you see them flying around. But I wasn't anywhere near EOR or anything where they're. I think they tried, or I don't know, maybe they don't. But you know, especially down there, the jet noise can be offensive to some people outside the base. So I may not have heard the full scream of the Raptor.
Whew, yeah. It's pretty crazy, man. Like, because when you're standing on, you know, literally my office was not that far from the flight line. And when one takes off, the whole building shakes. You know what I mean?
Wow.
So you know it. You know when they start cycling. Because there's also a training school there where literally until last, I guess, 2 years ago when I left. So literally until 2 years ago, they were still flying an F4 as an OP4 plane.
Oh my gosh, yeah. We did have F4s at Spangdahlem, and they were, you know, the troubleshooting on those is a different world from because these things had been patched together literally from, you know, battle damage, and I assume, you know, going back to the Viet Nam era and such.
For sure, absolutely.
I had no idea they were still flying them. Other than, to be honest, I knew they had mocked some of them up as targets, you know, to get blown up, but.
Yeah, this was the last. Actually, it was the last F4 in service in the Air Force.
Oh wow!
So they retired it like 2 years ago, and then they use, I think from now they use A4s, F-16s, and F-18s pretty much at this point. That's what they use now as adversary planes. But
oh yeah, interesting.
Yeah, man. So. All right. So now we've moved on here, and what are you doing now? I mean, if you can talk about it.
Well, I'll to be honest, you know, as it relates to full mag, we're really pretty deep into Volume 2, in that, I mean, Volume 1 is, you know, we're pretty proud coming out of the gate. It's pretty high quality, but obviously the second time you do something, you know, ever, there's improvements to be made. And so we learned a lot about the strengths of different artists, and then we've got a lot more stories. So right now we're just dialing it up, I guess I'd say, in the middle of Volume 2. And so pretty excited about the stories and the art, you know, the intersection of those two things.
So you guys record the so like when you get the stories from these guys, do you like record the stories and then have like writers turn it into like the story? You know what I'm saying? Like the process.
Sure. We have two different scenarios. Most of the, maybe 50-50, I guess I'd say, is it's a recorded interview. And then we do, for the most part, we have pretty big, long chunks of narrative where it's just word for word. But then, you know, if we had asked a question and come back around, we as the editorial staff will kind of go in there and put it into a cohesive narrative to put it into a story format. You know, we don't do anything to change any content, but just for the flow of the story. But some veterans actually write their own contribution, and those, in fact, the one guy who's still on active duty, who is a paratrooper, and he wrote about some stuff in Ghazni province in 2012, and we actually.
There we go. I see it. So, Task Force Devil paratrooper in Afghanistan.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's Alan Sutton who wrote that. He is an exceptional writer. His writing, the very first, more than at the very beginning of it, it's more of a narrative type thing that's setting the scene, which did not lend itself to our type of art. So that particular story we actually present in a unique fashion. The first part is just a regular article, and then they the Taliban arrive, and we jump into the art by Ron Wagner, which you can see some samples there on the website. So that particular story, and again, Alan's a great writer. We actually we only thought about this because of the nature of how it was written. We're like, well, let's do it both ways on this, and start with a regular article, and then when the Taliban roll in on their motorcycles and lead starts flying, that's
Right.
Great for comic art.
Yeah. So I see there you've got the All Roads Lead to Rome, which is the Doolittle Raider. It's David Thatcher story after leaving China in 1942, right?
That's right.
1970 Dust Off Air Ambulance over Vietnam. That's probably crazy. I can only imagine. And then what is it? How do you say that? Son.
I'm not a master of the Vietnamese language, so I don't know how that's pronounced. But it's the local name for Monkey Mountain, which is what the Marines call. There's a communication station there.
Gotcha.
And the place was infested with monkeys is, I think, why it was got the moniker.
So
Monkey
Mountain, Vietnam. Awesome stuff, man.
Well, and the All Roads Lead to Rome. I would say David Thatcher has got to be on the short list of people who have bombed both Tokyo and Rome. And I can't imagine that's a very long list of, people on the earth.
Right, for sure. I'd say there's no one but him, probably. Oh, man. Hell yeah. So what is the best way to find more about Full Magazine publishing?
Well, we're not incredibly savvy when it comes to social media. So we have a website. We managed to launch one of those, and that's fullmagazinepublishing.com. So it's all one word, Full Magazine Publishing. And that's the only place to purchase them. We also do have a Facebook presence. So if you just type in Full Magazine Publishing on Facebook, that's where we do try to put up some work in progress panels from stuff that's, as we get more into volume 2. And we hope, since it's a real visual format, we are going to eventually get ourselves up on, some of these more visual Instagram and such.
Right.
But for right now,
sure.
It's our website. Yeah.
Right. So who is it? When you say we, who is it?
Well, to be honest, we're dealing with a lot of freelancers and mercenaries, because artists by nature are freelancers, and then the veterans that are contributors. So I'm actually I'm the only actual person that's part of, the company Full Mag. But, there's we being basically it's a team of artists, veterans, and then historians. That it changes from story to story. So sometimes we'll have, So
it's
that's
just a
the
whole big ass team.
Yeah. A team of irregulars, I guess.
Team of irregulars. That's awesome. Well, August, this has been fun, man, and very interesting.
Oh, well, I appreciate you taking an interest in asking questions, because it's, I really love what you're doing with the Cigars and Sea Stories, because I just was really attracted to the concept of how are people creating value out there, and I think that's something that's important. And, in the last several years, especially, it just seems to me like, the definition of creating value isn't just bitching and protesting,
for sure.
It's doing something, helping your neighbor, or, take your neighbor's garbage out to the curb for him, or help snowblower, just something that simple. And so I just was attracted to that you're focusing on what people are doing that's productive in society.
Yeah, for sure. And I love what you guys are doing here with the Full Mag it's stories that need to be told, and I think it's done in a pretty awesome and unique way. I mean, like, there's so many movies or TV shows and stuff like that, but I think for one other medium, especially with like a graphic novel, is pretty cool. So keep it up, keep doing that, adding value, because that does add value. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, because you're telling these stories that those people aren't going to be able to tell forever. So.
Yeah. Well said.
All right. So we appreciate you coming on, August, and we'll stay in touch. Okay.
Excellent. Yeah. Thank you, Bennett. Thanks for having me, and keep it up.
Our flag unfurled.